What is the most used man-made material on Earth? You guessed it, it's concrete. Look around, it's everywhere. You see it in sidewalks, driveways, foundations, floors you stand on, and even entire structural building frames are made from concrete. So why don't we discuss it more? In each episode of Concrete Logic, we will explore one concrete-related topic with the help from industry professionals that are shaping the future of the trade. We'll talk with suppliers, contractors, architects, engineers, specialists, and even some proponents of competing materials about their views of concrete and their vision of its future. All right, welcome to another episode of the Concrete Logic Podcast. Today I got Shawn O'Connor from Somero. Shawn, first off, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And could you give a introduction to yourself and Somero?
Yeah, my name is Shawn O'Connor. I'm a sales specialist for Somero, and we are in 2019. I was hired for a new piece of equipment. All the equipment we had previously was slab on grade equipment, and now we switched over from needs and requests from customers to a slab on deck type situation. Mostly invented for structural concrete decks, PT decks, straight rebar decks, pan decks, not for metal decks where you have steel above you. We do use it on some metal decks, Infinity and Versa. But I was hired. I had entire North America when I started. I had that for about a year and a half. We hired a second person, Doug Shaper, for the other half of the country. So now I have the eastern half of North America. Just a little history. The SkyScreed was basically the same as all of our machines. We have an innovation council that gets together X amount of times a year, and concrete contractors from around the country come into Fort Myers. They meet and they talk to them about what are their needs right now. What do they need? And for years they've been asking for a laser screed to increase the quality on structural concrete decks. After 3 years in development, released it in 2019 with the SkyScreed 25. In 2020, we came out with our newest version, the SkyScreed 36. And the success has been phenomenal of the machine so far.
Yeah, so I have not been on a project with one yet, but I've seen pictures and videos, and we've spoken a couple times. So since we're audio only podcast at the moment, let's give folks an idea what this machine looks like. How would you describe what this machine looks like?
Well, anyone can go on to Somero's website. It's prominently listed on there, and they can see the machine, and the videos and stuff are on there also. It's a 3-part articulated boom with the same exact, the head that's on the machine is the exact same head that's on our S485 machine, which does millions and millions of square foot every year of high quality floors, whether it's slab on metal deck or slab on grade. So all the technology that's in the machine is the exact same technology we've used for the last 30 years, 35 years. What we've done is, instead of it being on a straight extension boom, now on an articulated boom, similar to a backhoe or anything else. The nice part about it is when you're operating the machine, the 3 arms are all censored to one another. So all you do is hit boom out, and it just booms out. And when you pull in, it just booms in. You don't have to control like a pump where you have to control all your different arms, or a backhoe where you have to control different things. On this, you just boom out, boom in, and it just gives you perfectly level floor.
Yeah, so that's a good description of it. I'm looking at a picture right now. It kind of looks like an excavator. If you took an excavator body and put it on 3 legs, you took the bottom out and put this machine on 3 legs, and then it's got, like you said, it's got this big arm that hangs off of it, and then has a screed part at the end of that boom. And then those are I'm looking at the top of the laser portion of the machine. It looks like there's some eyes on the machine that I guess correspond with the laser guidance. Is that right?
Yep. Just this exact same as all of our other machines. It has two laser receivers that stick up from the head. SR22 laser receivers. So when your transmitter shooting the laser beam, that just picks it up and keeps your head perfectly level as you're screeding in concrete.
Yeah. So it sits on this. The machine itself sits on this tripod, and I guess that is advantageous because this machine is made for projects that have like post tension decks. Is that right, Shawn?
Correct. Yeah, you have three. The reason we made it with three legs and not four legs is it makes it's much easier to get in between your cables and your rebar and stuff with three legs. Or there's four. Now the three legs, we put chains on them, safety chains on them, so they can't come out. So they're actually floating legs. So if you ran into that rare situation where you couldn't get all three down, you can take one leg, extend it a little bit, put the bucket there when you're doing your setup, and then you just mark on the bucket 2 + 2 inches. And you know it's 2 inches out, so as they're flying the machine, they can do it. So the process with the machine is you go out the day before, and it takes two guys about 45 minutes, half an hour, depending on the size of the pour. And they have a 3-point jig that matches the three legs of the machine. So you go out there with that jig, you put it where you want to start, you draw a circle around the 3 feet that are on it. You measure over 30 or 32 feet. You move the jig over. You place it in spot 2. You draw your circle. You go back to spot 1, and you basically drill a tiny hole in the center of where those circles are, and you drop a surveyor's flag that's on a piece of wire through the hole, and you put a 5-gallon bucket. So you do that on all 3 spots, and we just put 2 tiny screws just to stop the buckets from moving into the buckets. Now, when you're done, you set up normally on 10,000 square feet, you'll have 5 to 6 spots. It gets moved around with the crane. The crane needs to have the capacity to lift 10,400 pounds at the farthest point that the machine's going to be, which isn't an issue on 95% of the jobs that are structural jobs. Now you just go underneath, and every time you see a flag, you just take a reshore, you put a flag, you pinch the flag, and now your machine's reshored to the concrete floor below. That's your basic setup of the machine.
Right. So you do that the day before, so you don't have to worry about doing the reshores the day of the pour.
Correct. Everyone does it the day before, and then they actually usually fly the machine up to the first spot the day before. So when they get there in the morning, all they have to do is start at the machine, warm it up, and start placing concrete.
All right. And so that's the setup, and then the day of the pour, what's different? What's different when you're using the sky screed compared to how we typically pour a structural deck as far as labor and all that? How's that look different? Can you describe that?
Basically, you're gonna make the majority of the pour you're gonna place with 5 people. The 5 people would be the guy on the hose tip placing the concrete, guy in the consolidation vibrator, guy actually operating the sky screed machine, and 2 rakers with the head. Now the rakers don't have to do a lot with the concrete as far as pulling concrete. The only thing they're there for is to make sure that the concrete's not low. You could fill the whole entire plow with concrete at a 4-inch lump, and it's a powerful machine. It's just going to move the concrete. If the concrete is too high, it also has a quick pass function on it, which all of our machines have, which basically will screed a 1/2 inch above finished floor, and it's just for moving concrete out of the way. So you just pull concrete to the open, and you go back. You can screed in any direction. The head rotates 360. The machine rotates 360. When you're placing concrete, we place the concrete the exact same way that you place it now, using a traditional hand and wet pads and biker stripes and all that. We basically picture, even though the machine can go a whole circle, picture 180, and basically we'll start in one corner. You'll come out. Some people do 20 feet, some people do 30 feet, most are around 20, 25. And we'll just, after you place about 30 or 40 feet long of that strip, we'll just go in there and we'll just start screeding. A lot of people right now that own the machines have come up with some neat techniques where they're using a hand dipstick. And what they do is they put a washer on there at, say, 8¼ inches, if it's an 8-inch floor. So as they're using the consolidation vibrator, they're checking depth to make sure that they're not low. And if you do it like that, we have a contractor very successful with the machine in Florida, and they don't even have anybody on the head. They get they got it dialed in, they got their elevations right. Everybody else is concentrating on the other, on the other aspects. So instead of having, 14, 15, 16 guys out there setting wet pads, pulling 2x4s, vibra strikes, and all this, you eliminate all that. You go down to somewhere between the five. You can do it to a 5-man crew. Most people in the beginning are using 6 or 7. Just as they're getting better with the machine, they're eliminating more labor. They don't want to, just do it all in the beginning.
Right. And that's plus the 5 guys plus the operator of the machine. Is that right?
That's included in the 5.
Oh, that's included in the 5.
Yeah, the
and the
hose tip, the vibrator, and 2 rakers. And really, you'll get to one. You'll get to 1 raker. And what I like to explain to the people, if they take that other raker and they just give him a hand float, and he just does the edges and does a hand thing around the columns, that way the machine can just like you would do. People are familiar with their slab on grade machines. That's the way they do it. They start by hand on the edges, and then our 22 or SB15 come in, and it just ties in to those spots. Guys that as they're getting more experience, that's what a lot of them are doing.
And then the operator, I guess we should clarify it, but the operator, it's a remote control, just like say a concrete pump.
Yep, it's a top of the line remote control. It's a Scan Rico remote control that comes with the machine. You make any adjustments and stuff you need right from the remote control. You don't necessarily have to go back to the computer screen. When you're originally setting your grade, if you find that it always starts off slow. Any concrete pour with a laser screed starts off a little bit slower in the beginning because you're doing your first pass, making sure your numbers are right on, double checking, making little minor adjustments. But once you get it all dialed in, there's no adjustments for the machine. When it flies from one spot to the other, as soon as it hits the other spot, it's ready to start. There's no resetting anything. You just keep going, just like all of our other machines. It's all set by 1 laser and 2 receivers, and everything's set once in the beginning and ready to go.
Okay, and then so we were talking about the labor savings. So again, 5. You can get it dialed down, so you only have 5 folks doing the place and finish operation versus a maybe 12 to 15.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
And those 5 people aren't raking concrete all the time, hurting backs, hurting knees. The safety aspects are just as important sometimes as the labor savings. So your quality. I talk to people all the time, and they tell me that their quality, they can tell when they test their floors. When they get to the end of the pour, they see their quality kind of start going down, 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 and it's just natural. There's nothing other than guys are tired. Guys are shortcutting a little bit. The machine doesn't get tired. Gives you the same quality throughout.
And you mentioned it briefly, but going back to not. We were talking about labor savings, but the other point is the mix of the concrete. You can typically we would add a lot of chemical to the mix to make it easier for the place finish folks, and to rake it, to place it. But what you're saying is with the laser screed, just like the laser screed that we use on the ground, this laser screed is able to pull say a slump of 5 inches versus an 8-inch slump that you would need if you were doing it the labor manually.
Yeah, we've had customers telling us some of the feedback. We do a lot of feedback with our customers, especially me, because I need their information, what they're doing, what they're changing to pass that on to other owners. The reduction of high range water reducers has been a key. Most guys are pouring somewhere between the 8 and 10 inch slump when they're pouring structural decks, which makes sense because it's all got to be moved by hand and everything else. Our goal with the Sky Screed is get down to a 5 to 7 inch slump. Um, that's your bread and butter. We don't want a 9 or 10 inch slump because we'll get what's called blow by if the concrete's too wet, where it's going underneath of the vibrator and it's just kind of going back and it affects your quality. You're going to get your highest quality when you're between a 5 to 7 inch slump. The other advantage for labor savings with the 5 to 7 inch slump is that when your finishers are getting on the concrete, they're going to get on that concrete. I used to sell ready mix for a living, so I know concrete pretty good. If you go from a 8 to 10 inch slump to a 5 to 7 inch slump, you're going to be on that concrete right around 2 hours faster than you were going to be on it before to start the finishing process.
Yeah.
And that's a big, if somebody's running 10 hours, I've had customers say they were running 10 hours in their finishing process. So not only did they cut 2 hours out, they cut 2 hours of overtime out. So it's a huge cost savings.
Yeah. Um, so labor savings, hopefully some chemical in the ready mix savings. But let's talk about what an ideal project looks like, where this machine makes sense. So we mentioned a post-tension structural deck. Um, and then you were saying 10,000 square foot was an ideal pour size. And what about is there anything else that you need before pour day to prepare for the deck? I think we mentioned before, or in our previous conversations, about MEP sleeves.
Yep. We basically, all laser screeds, and a lot of people don't realize this, when the plow actually comes through the initial plow, it's almost a 1/4 inch below finished surface. And then as that goes by, concrete sponges back up, your vibrator goes across it to give you your smooth finish, bring your cream up, and that's going to give you your final elevation. That's how we get such high quality numbers on laser screeded floors. So the penetrations, the Hilti boxes, some people are just using straight PVC. If they're using straight PVC on an 8 inch floor and now they're making them 8 inches, we just have them they're all pre-cutting them at 8 inches. We have them pre-cut at 7 3/4. If they're Hilti boxes, most Hilti boxes have a lid on them that when you unscrew it, you can find a different notch to go down, and they're adjustable up to 1 inch, 1/4 inch at a time. They'll just go a 1/4 inch down, put them on. That way you're going to get your highest quality screeding right over the top of those. Same thing with penetrations. If you have scheduled openings, the machine will run right up to the openings and give you, even though it doesn't get tested there, you're going to get your highest quality floor. We use the ideal jobs that we found for the machine are the post tension decks. That's where we're getting our greatest results. One of the nice things is you can load a lot more concrete ahead of the machine. So if there is any deflection, that's going to happen before the laser screed comes across. Excuse me. But we've done it on straight rebar decks. We've also, guys that own the machines that don't own our slab on grade machines have done an aviation hangar, a beef barn. The machine doesn't know if it's on the ground or it's on a deck. It's just a laser screed. So in those situations, they moved it around with a lull. One moved it around with a track hoe with a hook on it and just picked it up and set it down in the dirt and just screed it away and just kept going. We did in the beef barn, we did 9,000 square feet the first day. We had to do it in 30 foot by 300 strips. And the second day, the guy said, "Can we do two?" We said, "We don't care." So we did 18,000 square feet. The most we've done square footage wise on a structural project was a deck in Denver, which we did in 2 pours. It was 17,000 square feet for the first pour and 21,000 square feet for the second pour. So you can do any size pour you need to. We like to say we could save time, but we really can't save time on the pour itself because it's what your concrete supply is. And most placing booms can only place about 80 yards per hour. That's kind of as fast as you could go.
Right. So it's always dependent on your supply and also your size of your place and finish crew, what they're able to put down. So we mentioned lowering the MEP sleeves, just going back to that. So that way the screed can go over the top of the sleeves. So, once that deck is cured, probably just got to go back and pop a hammer over the top of each one of those sleeves, right? So it uncovers them. Is that?
Yeah, you can clearly see them, and anyone that's on a deck that's done now by hand, trust me, if you go and look at that deck after it's poured, you'll see all your MEP sleeves, and they're all probably a good quarter from deflection in the deck when they load it with concrete. Very rarely will you see them sticking at surface or above surface. They're going to be below surface just from deflections on the deck, and they turn a completely different color. So it's very easy. You can easily see that these little circles on the deck, and like you said, that's what they're doing now when there's concrete over top of them. They just tap it with a hammer. It's really no different here. We're just making sure we have them down there.
Right. That's probably good practice if you're doing it by hand or machine.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, so we talked about, you obviously need a crane to move the machine. The head you mentioned vibrates, but you still need to have a vibrating man backpack vibrator, right?
Correct. It's not a
Yeah,
consolidation vibrator. It's a surface vibrator.
right. Um, so that's part of your 5-man crew. Uh, so I think that covers everything as far as the sky screed. Is there anything else you think we need to mention to let folks know?
One of the biggest things that we're finding now is and one of the biggest sales points is quality of the floor when it's done. We run into structural concrete decks. For the most part, they could have a 12-15 spec, maybe a 15-18 spec on it. Right now, we're running into some situations where we have retirement communities, and they have a FF 4025 FL, and they were having problems hitting it by hand in the traditional hand rotting and everything else. We went in with the machine. Right now, we just did our first demo for a customer in Abilene, Texas. Their first time ever working with the machine, and they got an FF52 and an FL37. So the quality of your floor is astronomical. We feel that as time goes on, more and more designers, architects, engineers are going to start seeing these numbers. The only reason they put such high numbers on warehouses and Walmarts and Costco's is because we have the machinery to do it. Right now, they don't put those high specs on high rises. So what we've basically been talking to people about is when you get this high quality, super high quality floor, the amount of remediation and stuff you have to do going back. General contractors that for the customers that have them are tickled pink because they tell me that one of their most aggravating parts of their entire job is when the flooring guy comes in and arguing with the concrete contractor and the flooring guy about what meets the spec, what doesn't. So if you have a spec of 15, 20, 15 FL, 20 FF, and you're giving them a 52 FF and a 37 FL, there's really no argument. And the general contractors are more than happy to make sure the crane time's available, the penetrations are lowered, and all the things that they need to be part of. They really support that a lot because it's going to save them aggravation in the end.
Right. Well, I think we there's a benefit for this machine where not only is it hard to find folks to do the place finish, but the cost of labor is going up. So that it may make sense to purchase one of these machines in the areas where labor costs are higher than say other areas. I think we were talking before. I thought an ideal spot might be in the Northeast for a machine because it seems like their labor rates are a little bit higher than say down south. Down south labor rates seem to be a bit lower, but you were mentioning that you're working down in Florida and Texas and everything, so it seems to maybe all the labor rates are catching up to each other. I don't know.
Well, it's just a matter of the length of time for your return on investment. Basically, your return on investment, if you're in the Northeast, it's going to be a half a million. You're at 80, $90 an hour. You're going to be a half a million square feet. It's going to pay for the machine. If you're down south, it's going to be $1 million to $1.2 million square feet. But we've done the return on investment on it, and yeah, it's what we're finding now, especially post COVID, is we all over the country we're hearing the same thing, that there's a labor shortage. It's tough to get people, and if you get people, I mean, like I told you the story. Oh, a gentleman at the World of Concrete told me my first year I was ever at World of Concrete, and he told me, son, it takes me 6 months to get up to full staff on my crew. And he said, then it takes me 3 months to get rid of half of the guys because they're terrible. And I took that to heart when he said it to me, and now I'm starting to hear that around the country again.
Well, with the place and finish, at least in my experience, you can't just go get a bunch of folks that may have a background in that and put them all together and expect them to provide a high quality product from day one. I think, especially on place and finish groups, they work as a team. They got to know what each other's capabilities are. The guys that the place and finish teams that have been working together for a long time seem to have a flow, just like a sports team. For instance, the NBA, lately these teams are paying astronomical amounts of money to get all these all-star players together, thinking that from day one they're going to have this great team and they're going to go win the championship. But it takes a long time for those teammates to figure out who's good at what and who's going to back them up in different situations. And I think a place and finish team is exactly the same way. So it's what that fella told you at World of Concrete. I believe it. It's just you gotta find a group of guys that can work together, and that have been working together for a while till you start seeing high quality come out of that group. With the machine, it kind of takes care of a lot of that problem. So if you're only trying to find 5 guys that can work together and they're comfortable being around the machine versus 12 to 15 guys that you typically need for that same size pour. So I get that, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how I know y'all's machine has progressed over the years. I've spoke to other folks that seen demos from like 5 years ago, and the feedback they shared with me. It seems like y'all have addressed a handful of those I don't know, issues or wishes or whatever you want to call them. And it's just like anything else, technology improves over time. So it'll be interesting to see how these things progress. And probably one day you're only going to need a couple folks instead of 5.
Yeah. It's funny you say that, Seth, because that's the absolute success of Somero is they have a very small ego. Everything that we do, we constantly are going to our customers, getting feedback from them, what they like and what they don't like, and we make adjustments to the machines, whether it be my SkyScreed or other machines. And all the ideas come from contractors. So you're right. As time goes on, we constantly make improvements on the machine, and that's where we got to with the 36. And it's just basically from the contractors.
Yeah. Well, we wanted to talk about the sky strip machine. So let's we got a few minutes here. Let's hit on this machine. This machine, could you describe what this machine is and what it does?
The Sky Strip machine is once again a machine that we developed based on contractors. They were telling us that 85 to 90% of their injuries in the stripping process on structural concrete decks was the removal of the plywood. So we started working with a scissor lift design with an articulated arm that comes out, and a claw system. And basically, came out last year with the Sky Strip machine that basically has a steel claw at the top, a jaw. It will go in up against the concrete. It'll break the seal of the concrete. The jaw closes on it, and it'll strip the plywood straight down to waist height for pickup. The machine reaches 16 feet is its max right now. We talked about developing it, but it needs to be a slim machine to get in between the reshores and stuff. So it can't have big stabilizers on like our other machines do. It's propane. So in the Northeast and stuff, obviously when you're stripping, they're heating the floor from the bottom so it has to be a propane machine because it's in an enclosed area. Our number one customer with the machine told us in a meeting last week that at this point last year, they're a very large customer, and they had a total of 40 injuries in the stripping process. And since they've incorporated the Sky Strip into their business, they're down to 4. They have 4 at this point this year. They basically bought their first machine. 3 weeks later, they bought 3 more. That had just put in an order for 2 more. They also are telling us that now they use a drop head system. Anytime you use a Titan or similar drop head system, it's the best system for the Sky Strip. And they've told us that they've reduced their labor time by 20% in stripping a floor.
Yeah, so if we could unpack a couple things there. So the machine itself, it looks like, I'm looking at a picture of it, but it looks like a scissor lift, and you took the part that you stand in, the basket itself was ripped off the top of this machine, and in its place you put looks like a little arm, almost like an upside down shovel, on the top of it, and that's the piece of the machine that goes up and pries the plywood off the bottom of the deck, of the concrete deck. Is that right?
Yep, that arm extends out 2 feet.
Oh, okay. So that
you actually come up to your plywood where you are. That extends out, breaks the sheet free, clamps down with 1700 psi pressure, grabs it, and just pulls it down. We've taken column forms down. If anyone's ever taken column forms down, when you get around the columns and they're cut around the columns, they're a nightmare to get down. What we found is one of the major cost savings that they have is damaging the plywood, and the cost of plywood these days is through the roof.
Oh yeah.
So instead of dropping pry barring sheets and cracking corners and dropping them to the ground and hoping nobody gets hit and all that, the machine just goes up, grabs it, brings it right down to waist height. Guy takes it, stacks it, and you're done.
And this machine runs remotely too, is that?
It's a remote control machine, so nobody has to be around the sheet when it's coming down. We had a situation, for us it worked out perfect, but there was a small scheduled opening up on the floor, and a bunch of guys had thrown stakes and tools and everything else in there. And when they stripped the sheet down, all the stuff that was in that hole just came flying down.
Oh.
But it didn't fly down on top of anybody because nobody was near the sheet. It just fell down onto the floor. Scared. Everyone jumped a little bit, but nobody anywhere around the sheet to get injured.
Yeah. So and typically when we're stripping decks, you would have a guy on a scaffold, like a rolling scaffold, and he climbs in there, and he's the one that's bringing the sheets down and handing it down to someone down below. And is that what you typically see? So this is what the machine is taking the place of?
I'm seeing more and more people with with longer crowbars and on an 8 to 9 foot ceiling where they're just going up and just crowbarring in and just popping the sheets and letting them fall.
Oh, wow. So they're not even getting on a scissor lift or anything.
Yeah, I see a lot of that across the country. It's not safe. It's not good. I hear a lot of complaints from general contractors. Right now, we're setting up some meetings with some, prominent GCs across the country to go in and introduce this technology to them. I think every company that I've ever been in the first 2 sentences of their mission statement, it addresses safety and how important safety is to their job sites and their work. And that's why we came out with the sky strip, because the contractors told us that the most unsafe part of the stripping process is getting the sheets off the ceiling.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people say it, but do they mean it? They all put it on their websites and, yeah, but, and plus insurance as well. So each time you have an injury, that's detrimental to your insurance rate.
And especially if you're self-insured. The
Yeah.
customers that bought the bunch of machines from us up here in the Northeast, they actually they're big enough that they're a self-insured company. And they said this year, the purchase of all those machines is going to put $1 to $2 million on their bottom line.
Yeah.
In cost savings from injuries.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty cool machine. I haven't seen one in person, but I could see the advantages of that. Definitely, I guess you would need to make sure the floor is clear and everything ahead of time. You go to some of these job sites and it just the floor's the mess. Got lots of debris and lots of shoring posts and things like that. So
I like to call that the tertiary benefit.
Yeah.
General contractors love it because you need to keep your floor really clean, and they love going up there and seeing the clean floor.
Yeah, we all do. Yeah, we all got to work together to get to that ideal situation where you don't have a lot of things on the floor.
Well, that's why it works so well with the Titan system. The guys go around in the scissor lift. They literally go around the scissor lift. They drop all their drop heads. They take their primaries and secondaries out. They hand them to the guys. The guys stack them in the racks as they're going. So there's nothing on the floor. They just keep going. Then when you're done, all you have is a floor of shore posts and plywood. And you can strip it fast and no damage.
Yeah. That when you mentioned that, I about plywood being dropped on the ground, that's a big pet peeve for a concrete contractor, especially if you're trying to reuse that plywood on the next floor up, and guys are dropping it and the corners are getting all messed up. And when we're using plywood that's $60-$70 a sheet, that adds up quick if you got to replace that.
Right now, that plywood's about $100 a sheet.
Depends what you're using, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, great. Yeah, that's another machine we'll all need to check out. Again, this podcast is about finding different technologies that are out there that help us be more productive and safer as well, like this machine. And but I appreciate you coming on the show today, Shawn. If someone wants to reach out to you and talk to you about the Sky Screed or the Sky Strip, what's the best way?
Best way would be phone. My phone number is 239-850-7931. And my email address is SOCONNOR@SOMERO.com.
Yeah, and as always, we'll have Shawn's contact information on the show notes, so you don't have to write all that down and listen to this last 10 seconds or so over and over again to write all that down. So we'll get that for you. Shawn, again, happy birthday. Thank you for coming on the show today on your birthday. Appreciate it.
I appreciate your time, Seth. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Concrete Logic Podcast. If you did enjoy, please hit subscribe on your favorite podcast listening app and share with others that you would think would find value in the podcast. I look forward to having more discussions. Please tune in, and we'll see you on the next episode of Concrete Logic Podcast.